The January 25th, 2011 Des Moines Park and Recreation Board will come to order, please. Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Galloway.
Here.
Hill.
Present.
Ogle.
Here.
Kenny Vanderhaar.
Here.
Nolan.
Here.
Cremery.
Here.
George. Here. Thornton.
Here.
We have a quorum. Before we get started, we had some sad news about the loss of Carol George's sister, so if we could take a moment of silence to observe that, please. Okay, thank you. And we're really sorry, Carol. Okay, now let's talk about the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any changes to the agenda? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. Next, we'll move on to the minutes of the December 28th meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, changes, additions, or corrections to the minutes?
I just had one quick question. You were going to find out about snowmobiles on Grace Lake? I think Susan had asked about that.
There's a lengthy answer to that. Let me get you a written report, if I could.
Okay.
Yeah. The answer fundamentally is that snowmobiles are not allowed on Grays Lake. And the reason is they'd have to cross a trail, and it's not lawful to ride a motorized vehicle of any kind over a trail. So if you can figure out how to get onto Grays Lake without crossing a trail, but that, you can't do that, so.
Set up
Wouldn't the
some-
dock,
we still have
I
to-
mean, the boat? No?
Gotta get
Cross the trail.
Gotcha.
jumps.
I'd say not.
Put a ramp and
But there were a couple related questions to that. We'll get answers to you.
Okay, thank you, Don.
any other comments about the minutes? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Next, we'll move on to item A, which is the volunteer awards presentation.
I'd like to introduce Callie Layau Courtright, who's our volunteer supervisor. She's been with us about 3 years now and does a terrific job. And she, in fact, initiated this program that has been, is certainly a highlight of our year in recognizing very important parts of our family. So we'll,
We're having technical difficulties.
are we having an issue?
Yeah. We got leaked out.
If you maybe, Chairman, maybe we can go ahead through my report in the interim here.
Sure.
I know that people are anxious to get to that, so, and this will allow us to burn a little bit of time.
Just don't ask me how to run the thing. so.
Okay. All right. Under my report, members of the board, you have a written summary of McHenry Park Trail Master Plan update, and if you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to answer. There's really nothing remarkably new. Richard Brown here is available. And I'll pass this back to Callie for a volunteer awards ceremony.
Chairman Galloway and members of the Park Board, thank you for joining us this evening as we honor the City of Des Moines Parks and Recreation volunteers. This past year in 2010, we faced incredible challenges in the Parks Department, from winter storms, followed by ice, and then flooding and rains. Many of our large events that utilize volunteers had to be canceled or rescheduled. But one thing stayed true during all of these challenges: our volunteers' dedication to our programs. They helped haul out trees, cleaned up after flooding, and even in tough economic times, continued to give of themselves to our community, handing out toys to children in need, bringing smiles to the faces of many on Halloween, protecting our historical treasures in our cemeteries, and much more. They continue to offer us so much and enrich our department in so many ways that cannot be measured. Today, we honor over 1,300 volunteers who donated around 8,200 hours of service, with a value of over $171,000. First, we'd like to give special recognition to 3 individuals who've been committed to our department and to our volunteers for many years: Russ Starr, Scott Wallace, and Gene Hine. Russ Starr has shared his humor and hard work ethic with our department for 38 years, many of those at the Grandview Golf Course, and the last 2 years in East Zone Parks. Russ has been committed to his job and the people he served. He even lived on site at the park residence and was so involved with Grandview Park that the neighbors would often come up and knock on his door to chat. Russ spent countless hours working with the neighborhood groups to build relationships, planning on volunteer projects such as cleaning up 4 Mile Creek, and on special projects such as Earth Day Trash Bash, where almost 1,200 volunteers beautified our city. Whether it was cleaning up an illegal dump in a neighborhood pocket park or meeting on a Sunday evening with gardeners, he has been committed to achieving the mission of our parks. Join me in thanking Russ Starr for his years of service.
Congratulations, sir.
Congratulations, Russ, and thank you very much.
Scott Wallace has been described by the Des Moines Founders Garden Club, a volunteer group active on the west side, as, quote, one of the best Greenwood Park managers they've worked with. He has always been available for consultations, advice, and getting projects completed. Scott has shared his loyalty, patience, and friendly smile with our department for 38 years. Many of those years were at Waveland Golf Course and the last 2 years in West Zone Parks. Scott spent countless hours working with volunteers such as the Rose Garden Advisory Committee and Miles Mills, Des Moines Founders Garden Club, Citizen Golf Committee, and volunteer neighborhood associations that beautify our parks and streetscapes. Scott has worked hard to build relationships with all of our volunteers and stakeholders, fostering support of our parks and golf courses. Join me in thanking Scott Wallace for his years of service.
Congratulations, Scott, and thank you very much. Thank you, Bill.
Jane Hine, as president of the Friends of Des Moines Parks, has easily volunteered more than 1,000 hours of her time building membership, writing newsletters, organizing meetings, coordinating events, raising funds, and establishing the foundation for a successful nonprofit support group. Through Jane's support, they've provided swim lessons for underprivileged youth, printed new trail maps, supported nature clubs connecting youth and their families to the outdoors, sponsored free flicks, yoga in the park, and Earth Day Trash Bash, bringing citizens into our parks, increasing the health of our community and protecting our resources. Jane could not be here this evening, so she will be accepting at a park board meeting at a later date. Russ, Scott, and Jane have each endured growing pains, reorganizations, and challenges along the way, but they have all continued to demonstrate what great leadership is. Des Moines Parks and Recreation would again like to honor and thank each of you for the gift of your times and talents. This year, we honor Robin Leeper with the Volunteer Supervisor of the Year Award. Always prepared, Robin has been an outstanding volunteer supervisor who clearly defines her needs. Whether it is for events such as Mayor's Annual Bike Ride, where she coordinates and manages volunteer help to register riders, staff rest stops, or serve lunch, or at events such as Earth Day Trash Bash, Carp Festival, Hershey's Track Meet, Run for the Egg, Free Flicks, Father, Daughter, and more, she has gone above and beyond, making sure volunteers feel welcomed and the experience is enjoyable, which brings them back. Robin has always taken the initiative with her special events volunteers, including following up to recognize them for their service. She has represented the department well over the 2010 year and even took on the extra task of helping with the coordination and management of the overall program while I was on maternity leave. Please join me in honoring Mrs. Robin Leeper as the 2010 Volunteer Supervisor of the Year. Tonight, we honor Wells Fargo as the Corporate Volunteer Group of the Year. Wells Fargo has committed to the City of Des Moines Parks and Recreation Department on so many levels, from financial contributions for Earth Day Trash Bash to dedicating corporate volunteers in areas such as Prospect Park. Their community and environmental leadership is outstanding. The Wells Fargo volunteers picked up litter at several of our parks, helped restore our lilac arboretum, hosted our children's Halloween party, and set up our Toys for Tots distribution at Pioneer Columbus Community Center. They continue to provide for our parks, our recreational facilities, and our community. Tonight we have Russ Cross and Catherine Murphy representing Wells Fargo. Please join me in honoring Wells Fargo as the 2010 City of Des Moines Parks and Recreation Corporate Volunteer Group of the Year. Thank you. House of Mercy was selected for the 2010 Volunteer Group of the Year Award. Throughout the year, they have volunteered over 100 hours transplanting plants in our greenhouse, cleaning up litter, helping at the cemeteries, winterizing the rose garden for the second year, and planting thousands of bulbs in downtown Des Moines to prepare for spring. House of Mercy comes prepared, has excellent supervision, and dedicated workers. They help provide us a service while allowing these young women to gain new skills while giving back. We recognize House of Mercy for their commitment to our community, our cemeteries, and our parks. Tonight we have Brandy Dakin representing House of Mercy. Please join me in honoring House of Mercy as the 2010 Volunteer Group of the Year. Candy Drost was selected for the Volunteer of the Year Award for being a phenomenal garden leader at the Franklin Community Garden. She took over leadership starting in March 2010 and since then has put in numerous hours providing strong leadership to the 180 plot holders of the garden. A skilled communicator, Candy's professionalism and dedication to her fellow gardeners was a great asset to staff. She took ownership right away and led the effort, creating 60 new plots, orienting each new plot holder to the rules and processes of the garden. Candy coordinated garden resources such as manure, compost, and wood chip requests and excelled in relationship building, a key component in leading a community garden with such a variety of gardeners, including those with young families, immigrants, teenagers, seniors, and many first-time gardeners. To create more of a sense of community with the gardeners, she sent out frequent email communications, had a garden bulletin board put up, scheduled community work days, garden classes, seed swaps, and planting of a new community raspberry patch, just to name a few. Thank you, Candy, for stepping forward and being an ambassador to our community. Tonight, helping present this award to Candy are Scott Wallace, former manager of the park, Tiva Dawson, who coordinates community gardens, and Donna Vinda, co-garden leader. Tonight we honor two very deserving people with Lifetime Achievement Awards joining previous Lifetime Achievement Award winners Suzette Jensen and Joe Galloway. Our first honoree is Woodland Cemetery's volunteer citizen historian Gerald LeBlanc. Dubbed the Director of Restoration and Tours by the Des Moines Register, Mr. LeBlanc has volunteered 17 years researching cemetery history and supporting numerous restoration projects and memorials honoring the former citizens buried here. He has led many cemetery tours over the years, educating the public and encouraging protection of these unique historical treasures. Gerald was born in 1930, the son of the owner of a monument company located on the city's northeast side. Gerald developed a passion for monument restoration and cemetery history as a teenager working for his father, identifying new monument locations at Woodland Cemetery. His enthusiasm for our cemeteries has driven him to seek funding for projects such as Denman Fountain restoration, headstones for pioneer infants, cleaning of the veteran stones at Glendale Cemetery, the Glendale Abbey, and memorial benches for veteran areas. Thank you, Gerald, for your leadership and passion for our cemeteries. We end this evening with our second Lifetime Achievement honoree, Pauline Doris Oline. But it is with a heavy heart that I must tell you that Pauline died peacefully at home this past week. A few days ago, we presented her award and some of our thoughts at her funeral, but we are honored tonight to present it again in front of her friends, family, and in the entire city of Des Moines. Pauline was born in 1924 in Winterset, Iowa, and moved to Des Moines in 1943. Good-natured, spunky, and upbeat, Pauline Oline's enthusiasm was contagious. She had this internal energy that literally radiated out of her. She was funny and warm, and immediately when she entered the room, her spirit would fill the air. People were drawn to her. Pauline, a grandmother and professional clown, was active in her community and neighborhood for years. PDO on the go is what she always said with a laugh, and on the go she always was. What a giving spirit. She volunteered thousands of hours in our community. She and her husband started Lawson's Photography. She was president of Highland Park Business Women's Club in 1960, was active as a master gardener, and part of the Foresters. Pauline, also known in the clown world as Ollie, brightened the lives of so many, including children and veterans, for around 30 years as part of the Corn Patch Clowns. She took an active leadership role in the Capitol East Neighborhood Association and the Walnut Trace Green Space, including being in the first graduating class of the Des Moines Neighborhood Leadership Academy. In the greenhouse, each year she arrived with a smile on her face, ready to help transplant over 350,000 annuals. She helped wherever she was needed, from transplanting to recruiting new volunteers. When the flowers were done growing in the greenhouse, she helped rally the neighborhood troops to use them to beautify public spaces in her neighborhood parks. She never stopped. Pauline knew how to give to her community through beautification, community improvement, and safety awareness. Although we've tried to share with you how special she was, there truly are not enough words to describe what a remarkable woman she was. Thank you, Pauline, for sharing your sunshine and your spirit and yourself in so many ways with the city of Des Moines. The city and each of us is better for having known her. Thank you for touching so many lives. Thank you for being a volunteer, a mother, a clown, and a leader. Thank you for being you. We will miss you and hope you're here again tonight with us as we honor you again, helping present this award this evening. Are Gene Murray and Sarah Mullihan from the City Greenhouse, and accepting on her behalf is Pauline's brother, Gene Parkins. Please join me in honoring Pauline O'Lean with the 2010 City of Des Moines Parks and Recreation Volunteer Lifetime Achievement Award. Thank you again to everybody, to all of our special award winners and volunteers for an outstanding year of service, and to the Park Board. We look forward to another exciting year in 2011.
Okay, thank you very much, Kelly. Great job, and thanks to all the volunteers. It's really heartwarming to see all the efforts that you did, and we're really glad that we had a chance to recognize you tonight. We'll just take a quick break here while everybody moves out.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks again, everybody. Now we'll move back to Don's report. Were there any questions about the McHenry Trail plan when we broke off for the volunteer awards presentation? No questions about that? Okay, we'll move on to the next item on Don's report.
Ben, would you want to visit about the mission and vision meeting? I think you'll recall that a week from last night, right?
Yes.
31st, we have our upcoming mission and vision planning meeting, which
Chairman Galloway, members of the Des Moines Park and Recreation Board, Ben Page, Assistant Director. Just wanted to remind you tonight that we are less than a week away. It's next Monday evening. Our location will be Waveland Golf Course Clubhouse. We'll have the facility that evening from 5 to 8 p.m. To begin to get your thoughts on our strategic planning for the future mission and vision of the department.
anything they need to do, read, have ahead of time?
We will be sending out, if we already haven't sent out, the 2007 needs assessment for the community on recreational needs to remind you of what was important in 2007, and you can look that over, and we'll have some questions that will follow that shortly too this week. We'll get that out.
Okay. So 5 o'clock?
5 to 8 p.m. at Waveland Golf Course Clubhouse on Monday, January 31st.
Okay, good, thanks. Richard Brown will talk about our land planning committee. I think he wants to visit about an upcoming meeting with that.
Chairman Galloway, members of the board, Richard Brown, Park Planner 3. I'm excited that we're going to get going here pretty soon on the Land Planning Committee. You should be hearing from me or Rebecca late this week on a couple of times for our first meeting. So be thinking about some times over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll try to get a meeting set up so we can get this kicked off and probably have about 5 to 6 meetings over throughout 2011 so we can get some results and get this taken care of by the end of this year.
Who's on that committee from the board?
I think there was about 8 of the park board members. I don't have the list right in front of me.
Okay.
And then we have,
A large enough group will do it electronically, then good.
yep, and then we'll be having other members from other city departments that relate to some of the activities that'll be part of the land planning committee. So
Okay.
be looking for communication from us here at the end of this week or early next week, and we'll get a date set up to get going on that.
And of course, we'll have to post that meeting because if all 8 came, that would be a quorum. So.
Just real briefly, there will be coming in the next, I really don't even know the time frame on this, but the city manager has suggested that the park board do a joint meeting with the council in the way of a workshop to discuss the items that were in the letter on urban conservation. So I think that's a good thought. We'll prepare something for that, and I don't have a date for it, but I just wanted you to be alert that when that's scheduled, I'll let you know that. And we'll try to have at least a couple weeks' notice with that. That'll be a Monday morning at 7:30. Don't have a date yet. And we have winter games coming up, first full weekend in February. And I don't know whether, Brian, did you want to talk about that a little bit? Get the board and get a little publicity on that event.
Chairman Galloway, Park Board members, I'm Brian Becker, Park and Recreation Superintendent. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to let me talk about the 2011 Des Moines Winter Games, which will be held February 4th, 5th, and 6th at 11 different outdoor venues across the city of Des Moines. We'll have an estimated 8,000 participants this year. Individual events offered this year is polar plunge, downhill kayaking, Des Moines Rail Jam, downhill skiing, snowboarding, downhill biking, ice fishing, which it can also be entered as a team event, cardboard sledding, kids events, the Ziffy Bop, and the Mullet Run, which is actually one of our new additions this year. So that'll be interesting. Team events offered this year are the snow sculpting, softball tournament, flag football tournament, pond hockey, and broom hockey, or broom ball, excuse me. Team registration deadlines are Thursday, January 27th. This year, you can register online at the City of Des Moines webpage at www.dmgov.org. That is something new we just started about 3 weeks ago. We're really excited. We're getting registrations coming in daily on that online registration system. Individual registrations will be accepted the day of, but we encourage people to pre-register if possible. For more information, you can call 248-6310, or again, visit the city webpage at www.dmgov.org.
Any questions for Brian?
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
I'd like to take just a couple minutes to give you an update on the CIP. There was a presentation that was made Monday at City Council, and I'm going to give you a little information from that. Did you have those copies? Those are the slides that I printed out. Yeah, why don't you give me a set of that too, would you please? Great, thank you, Kevin. Most of the presentation that was made Monday to City Council was about the general funding strategy for capital improvement program. And, I'll just give you a very brief overview and tell you that the city has been the beneficiary of some good investment policy actions where we have invested in terms of bonds and reduced our interest rates, which allowed some capacity for new projects. That capacity is being used largely to promote the future and further development of the Southeast Connector. There's an expectation that there will be potentially federal funds available that would help that project proceed quicker than had been originally scheduled, and that would take the Southeast Connector, you know, is now built to about Southeast 8th Street all the way to Southeast 14th. That's a particular interest to us in Parks because it actually then extends beyond 14th to 30th, again expedited, and we have a maintenance facility near Kemin Industries that will be impacted by that. Our maintenance facility in that location will be relocated as a part of a new metropolitan metro service park for our municipality, and that facility will combine Parks and Recreation, Public Works, and other field operation facilities along Southeast 14th Street in Moray. Didn't intend to go into all the detail of that today, but we are in the process of interviewing for architectural firms, and that project looks like it will be moving ahead with council support. But for you today, there's some information here that relates to our parks budget. I don't expect you to be able to necessarily digest all this right now. This is the information that was given to council. Overall, you'll see that our park improvement item in the CIP, if you look at the bottom category, change from adopted, and you see beginning in 2011-12 through 2015-16, you'll see some reductions. Those reductions are largely because we have negotiated less of a financial commitment between the city and the Zoo Foundation. The Zoo Foundation's request has been diminished. They've actually, as you know, changed their plan and are now looking towards a plan that would build more closer to the zoo, expedite their program. They've asked us for a few more funds up front, but less over the long term. So I'd be happy to provide you some detail in terms of other reductions. The same information here is in a pie chart here. Even though there has been a bit of a reduction, we're fortunate here in the city to have a pretty extensive capital improvement program over the course of this 6 years, 2012 through 2017. Our capital improvement program is projected to be about $27 million. That added to the 11 in the current year makes for almost a $40 million capital improvement program. So we have had, we've taken some reductions in a few areas, but I'm really comfortable that we've had a really great support at a council level for continuing to build capital projects. One of the issues we run into more than anything is that there has been so much capital work happening related to the floods of 2008 and 2010 that our engineering department, with that being the first priority, has really been tied up trying to get a lot of those projects implemented. So some of our projects have been a little bit slower than we would have anticipated. Nevertheless, the capital funding has continued to be pretty good. Now I'm going to go through a couple slides that talk about specific projects that relate to parks. Blank Park Zoo entrance is a new project that's actually not general obligation bond funded. It's funded by other grants. It's in conjunction with the zoo's move to build more of the facilities closer to the current zoo, and that project is under design. As I mentioned before, our original commitment of 10.4 is now scaled back to about 8.1 million, but is loaded more in the front end of our investment. Our trails, recreation trails projects continue to be funded. The big project you'll see over the course of the next year, we believe, is the completion of the Southeast Riverfront Trail along the Des Moines River. That's a project that will be about $2.4 million. As you can see, 1.5 of it funded with outside grants. So it's been a significant investment by other segments of government. Principal Park is a project that we're increasing funding for, as we're recommending the 6-year program for 2 reasons. You'll see that as I proceed along here further too, we're also putting money into ADA and a lot of other facilities. The 2 things I would mention to you is, number 1, is the city is under a Department of Justice negotiated agreement for improvements to public facilities to meet the requirements of 1991 ADA. Okay? That requirement has created a need for us to put more money in the CIP in the 6-year program. One of those major facilities is Principal Park. In addition to that, Principal Park is now 20 years old. We did an analysis of the stadium facility. Over the course of the last 12 months, hired an outside consulting firm to do a structural analysis. That report came back with some recommendations of immediate things that should be done and things that could be done over the next 5 years. We intend to implement those, and so there is funding provided there, at least in the recommended budget of the city manager. Before I leave Principal Park, I would just say, even though this is a nice increase here, I think we've got to be realistic as we move down the road. The stadium is 20 years old. Replacement cost of that stadium would be $40 or $50 million today. The original investment was about 12. There's been 5 or 6, maybe $8 million invested since then. I can get you the detail on the exact numbers. But, and that number, by the way, has been matched by the Iowa Cubs, money that they've also put into the stadium. Bottom line is, for us to maintain a quality minor league baseball stadium, it's going to require an investment of some capital funds in the next 5 to 10 year period to make sure that we maintain our agreement with the Chicago Cubs. We continue to have funds available for forestry improvements, which specifically relates to planting trees and to management of our urban forest. We use some of those monies for controlled burns and for some consulting work that we do in the way of planning for forestry programs. We have added $50,000 a year in our neighborhood park program. That helps accommodate some athletic facilities that we built over the course of the past 10 years or so. We've included neighborhood parks as an addition there. Running it through that account, we wanted to be clear that it is to go towards some of the sports complexes we've built. Again, as those facilities start to get a little bit older, we think it's time to begin reinvesting in those facilities. The city has done, as a unit of government here in the state, has really done a remarkable job, probably better than most governments, frankly, of continuing to reinvest in our facilities. I think if you look at, right across the street here, we have Simon Estes Amphitheater that now is going on 20 years old. You walk down to that facility today and it doesn't look like it's 20 years old, frankly. We've done a nice job of taking care of those facilities, and I think the taxpayers, respond to that when asked on various levels for tax support for capital projects if you do a good job of taking care of what you've already got. Oh, okay. On 21? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I see the bullet I was missing. One piece of good news, I think, for all of you, we've been, over the course of many years, trying to figure out what we're going to do at dog parks. We've recently conducted some public meetings, and we've, I think, settled on attempting to get a dog park built on the southeast side of Ewing Park, maybe as early as this summer. In addition to that, we've had an interest in 2 dog park locations downtown and Tower Park. So we think, moving ahead in the next 3 to 5 years, we've got about 4 locations that would serve a greater part of the community. We've requested $200,000 towards that. That won't be enough. We intend to privately fundraise. We've also got some ideas as to how to raise revenue for this effort, but I think the bottom line is that this is enough money to get us going and actually get a dog park built in Ewing Park yet this year. I want to give credit where it's due here. Kevin Moran of our staff puts our capital program together. The staff, all of whom you've seen today and the others that you've seen previously, have the responsibility to implement this program. It's a significant program. We're blessed to have a council that supports parks and recreation. To be real honest with you, I think this level of support in today's economic times is remarkable by them, and it comes with an understanding that it's important to continue to invest in those facilities today and spend the money to care for them as we move along and not have great expenses down the road. We're not building a lot of new parks, and we certainly have a number of park master plans that we aren't able to move on right now in these economic times, but I will say this, we're at least taking care of what we have today. Anything to add? All right.
Okay, thank you, Don. Good report. Any questions for Don about this or about anything?
I guess I have a question. Were we going to be having a tour of the river trail, the Des Moines River Trail? there was some conversations about habitat along that trail, and have we had any further discussions about that?
Well, I recall that we were going to do a couple of tours, trail tours this fall, and Gailey Wilson was one of them, and of course it's been closed the entire year, so I think we canceled that one. We can certainly schedule something along the southeast riverfront, but I'm going to look to Mindy and or Richard. Are there environmental issues there or concerns that we had that we wanted to show maybe some of the environmental features of the trail? Was that your question, Susan?
Yes.
Chairman Galloway, members of the board, and Mindy Moore, Park Planner 2. The Des Moines River Trail is still finishing design. The environmental issues, are you referring to the eagle roosting area?
Okay.
We redesigned the trail to avoid the eagle roosting area, so we've dealt with that issue. As far as the tour, we've walked, and we can walk in the grass.
No, I hadn't heard about the redesigning of.
Yeah, we redesigned to avoid the roosting area.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, now I recall. Yeah, we were there between, the Scott Street Bridge, Southeast First, all the way to Southeast Sixth. We were at one point down along the riverbank, but we're up on the
levee now.
On the levee now, so we've avoided that area. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Any other questions from anyone? Say, speaking of eagles, in this last week, I have seen more eagles along the Des Moines River at different places than at any other time.
Yeah.
It's, at one time on the interurban bridge, I spotted 15 eagles, just all in one view. And then crossing the University Bridge on the way here, there were 4 eagles sitting in one tree. So I've never seen so many eagles.
They're frequently across Grand Avenue as I come down to City Hall, when there's one almost always flying right over the bridges along the river.
So that's really good news. Okay, well, thank you, Don. Great report. Next, we'll move on to item B for board action, the Heritage Carousel Operating Agreement.
That is recommended for your approval. I think you saw it last month, and if you have questions, Andrew Hennessy is responsible for the agreement and will be happy to answer those questions, I'm sure.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Are we ready to vote? Okay, Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Galloway.
Yes.
Gelb.
Yes.
Ogle. Yes. Haney Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Cahill.
Yes.
Cremery.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Thornton.
Yes.
Chen.
Yes.
It is approved. Next, we'll move on to item C for board action, the Boys and Girls Club lease.
We have a current operating agreement, a lease with the Boys and Girls Club to operate Logan Community Center as a recreation amenity in the neighborhood. And the Boys and Girls Club, as a business decision, have decided to not continue to operate that facility. It's kind of predictable in a way. They entered into an agreement with Des Moines Schools a few years ago at George Washington Carver to build a facility known as the Levitt Boys and Girls Club. It's very near that location. They also provide service in other locations. So it's come to the point where they really just don't have the ability to continue to operate. They came to us late, I would say late in the summer, and we talked and negotiated and discussed with them ways that we might be able to keep them in the building, because frankly we'd like to have them there during the program. But they've had to make this decision, which we honor. We're asking you to agree to terminate their lease. I don't know what options there would be other than some sort of legal action. We certainly wouldn't take part with them. Again, they've made a case with us where it's necessary for them to leave and negotiated with us that they would continue to provide service in the building through February, and we thought that was reasonable. So we're parting on amicable terms. We wish them the best, and the next chapter will be for us to see how we might reuse that building. I think there has been a meeting scheduled in February. Tiva, would you just maybe talk for a second about that meeting? We have a proposal from Odell Jenkins concerning that, and you can talk a little bit about that in that public meeting.
Yeah, Chairman Galloway, members of the board, Tiva Dawson, Recreation Manager. I don't know great detail, but Odell Jenkins has a strong interest in what happens to the building, as well as really programming for the youth that are in the neighborhood and surrounding areas. And he has been out talking to a lot of different organizations, Grandview, Lifeline, and just trying to see who's interested in serving youth in the neighborhood in the greater Des Moines area, and if they feel like they have a role to play in doing that through the Logan Community Center. So he's organized a meeting on February 25th. It's a Friday evening at 7 o'clock at Logan. Any organization or yourself who you think might be interested in that space or a portion of that space or programming out of Logan, please do feel free to have them contact me or contact Odell and to join in that meeting, the community meeting. It's just a chance for all of us to kind of brainstorm and assess what the potential is for the building.
How big is the space?
Boy, I don't know if I know square footage. I mean, it's an old
elementary school building, 30,000 square feet maybe on both floors, and including a gymnasium, cafeteria facility, where I don't know that cooking is available today, but at least warming, and
right.
Community type room and then classrooms. So pretty typical old 2-level elementary school building.
Yep. We have currently 2 tenants. The Department of Human Services has kind of a back portion, but their main entrance is coming off from the north. They do use the restrooms on the main floor, though. And then we also have Doug Romig's staff with the Community Action Center. They're currently housed upstairs. We're looking at temporarily moving them downstairs just so that there's not quite so much of a building that's free and open to use. So we're kind of looking at some temporary shifts, but all of that will still be discussed at the community meeting.
So a meeting has been set, and this is an invitation for anybody interested to
Correct.
come.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Tiva. Any questions or discussion about the lease situation? Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are we ready to vote then?
Got a question.
Sure.
Fill me in about the history of that. How did that old building come to, school building,
Sure.
come to the Park and Recreation?
I can give you at least history that's 20 years old, and sometimes somebody told me about things before that. So the city in the 1960s and probably early 70s, through community development block grant funding and projects that were federally funded at that time, opened a series of community centers throughout Des Moines. In fact, we built some. We built 4 Mile Community Center on the east side, Pioneer Columbus on the south side. Wilkie House is one that's available on the west side. The Model City Community Center on the near north side. Logan, I may be missing 1 or 2 in there. But they were developed as facilities that provided a couple of functions. One was to deliver on a neighborhood basis services to low and moderate income persons who would get energy assistance or different kinds of federal assistance. There was a recreation element with almost all of those, and they had gymnasiums. The city Parks and Recreation Department for years operated those facilities as city park and recreation supported venues. With reductions over the course of many years, one of the outsourcing moves that we've made is to enter into agreements with other organizations to operate those facilities. We operated Model City Community Center until, I want to say, the late 1990s, until we got to a point where we had a bit of a skeleton staff, just a couple full-time people there. A lot of federal money was no longer available. In that case, the YMCA came to us and had an interest in building a YMCA in that neighborhood. In a really terrific agreement, the city agreed to put some capital money in. The YMCA took the building over, put significant capital money in, built a pool, and they have been since operating the Grub YMCA as the old Model City Community Center. Logan was another example of where we were able to do that sort of an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club. And actually, when we entered into the agreement with Logan, our hope was, and I think theirs too at the time, that they would eventually do capital fundraising and might make similar improvements. So it didn't turn out exactly as we thought. From the standpoint of the city's fiscal situation, it allowed us to continue to deliver the services through a nonprofit organization and not have the city expense. Now, things do change, and the Boys and Girls Club service, they would say if they were here today, I think, is that they're now providing it in a different way. They have it at Levitt through K through fifth grade, and some other facilities for middle school and up. And for those kids, they bus them from their schools or from their neighborhoods to those other facilities. Having said that, though, some neighborhood folks, including Odell, believe there's still a need for something in the neighborhood, and he wants to pursue that with this public meeting. So that's the history of how the city ended up with those buildings. In the case of Logan and Model City, for instance, there wasn't a need to build a building in those neighborhoods because there was already a school building, and the city agreed to take those buildings over, unlike where we built buildings on the east side and south side.
Okay, I have another question. Thank you. It's kind of unusual to have a 25 years agreement. Usually, I mean, we see 5 years or 10 years. Is that kind of unusual, 25 years? Because that's a long time, almost a generation.
Right.
Since it changed so rapidly.
Well, I think that, of course, all those agreements are different. But on the side of the leasee, I think they'd say that in order for them to fundraise and to have capital stability in their organization, any nonprofit, and we have a similar situation on our agenda next with the zoo, where those groups look for long-term commitments from the city. If they're going to go out and raise capital money and invest in a facility, they want to make sure they've got long-term commitment from the city. Mm-hmm. On our basis, if it's fiscally advantageous to us and delivers a service, we'd like it to be 100 years. We'll take as long as we can get, and that's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but it really is to our benefit if we find an organization that can deliver the service and save the taxpayers money, that we enter into the longest agreement we can. So I think that's why we ended up with 25 years in this agreement. And I think both parties went into it with the idea that it would be a 25-year agreement. Things do change, and here we are today hoping to find some viable reuse for the building.
So do we have any agreement or clause in the agreement to talk about, how to, when and how to terminate the contract or agreement? Does that include the original agreement?
We do. And do you want to talk about that, or I could talk about it in a real general way. My response to it would be is that you got to keep in mind we're negotiating with a partner that we're hoping signs the agreement and delivers the service, and so maybe a bit unlike a for-profit operator that might come into public property, we're less likely to put some stipulation that would chase them away from the deal. And so in this particular case, the agreement says that they're to continue to operate and deliver the service, and their consideration for use of the building was custodial service in this case.
Yeah, because I have a concern. It's okay, the facility comes back to us, but at the same time, we have a limited resources.
Right.
What are we going to do with this facility if there's another venue to come in?
Right.
Yeah.
Hope we find another user. We do have, one thing I haven't shared is that we do have a couple tenants in the building. They're paying us rent, and that rent exceeds our operating costs today. So the reality of that building today is that we are in fact generating enough income to pay the utility costs and actually probably our routine maintenance. We do have a loss here, an impact that I think has been estimated for you today at about $20,000 of picking this responsibility up. But that's only a responsibility if we don't find another tenant. And actually, if we don't find another tenant, there may in fact be a way to isolate areas of the building off and not actually do the daily routine maintenance that we've estimated here in this cost. So, yeah, we'd prefer that it didn't happen. We worked with them, Cindy, to try to continue to keep them on board with us. But all nonprofit organizations have had to make difficult business decisions in the last couple years in particular, and they made one that I looked at their rationale, and I have to say I understand what they're doing here, and I can't argue it. Although we do hope to find an answer.
Thank you.
But the good questions, appreciate it.
Any other questions? Okay, Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Galloway.
Yes?
Gelb.
Yes.
Eckel.
Yes.
Haney Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Cahill.
Yes.
Cremery.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Thornton.
Yes.
Chen.
Yes.
It is approved. Next, we'll move on to item D for board action, the A.H. Blank Park Zoo Agreement.
We have the chief executive of the zoo, here, Mark Vukovich, here today, and their business manager. I don't know if that's your title or not, but that's what she does from what I see, Emily, that are here to answer questions. But let me tell you that just a couple things real briefly. You have a report from Ben Page that explains what this agreement is. There's a communication to you that summarizes it, and there's an actual letter that was written and reviewed by us that Mark gave to his board of directors. The board of directors received that letter actually at a board meeting today and adopted it and recommended its approval. And the next step being that you take this letter, which is a set of guiding principles, and you develop an actual agreement. That's what we're asking you to do today also. We're asking you to look at the terms on this letter and answer questions you might have, but then recommend it on to the City Council that City Legal and Parks and Rec and the zoo work together to have a final agreement. That would not come back to you, by the way. It would just be approved by Council. If there were something substantially different in that agreement, we'll come back to you. But the terms and conditions, I think you'll see here, will follow forward. The second thing I'll say is that this is very advantageous to the city in a couple ways. It assures that our number one visitor attraction and one of the greater visitor attractions in the state of Iowa has a future with a strong commitment from the private sector to finance its capital improvement, development, and operation for many years. Secondly, it fixes the city's costs so that versus our operation, we can predict what our expense will be. And with that, begins to share that expense in the regional area. By having the nonprofit organization in a first position in terms of operation, I think they'll do a better job than the city could on its own of operating the facility and expecting participation regionally. So we've had a good 5-year or so agreement initially that tested this model. It's like a lot of models that we've done. You're going to see the same thing coming forward on the Botanical Center. If the city had all the money in the world, we could operate all these attractions and facilities with tax money and wouldn't have nonprofit organizations. But, I don't think that would be as good of a situation, even if we did. Because what you have in this situation is you have a lot of volunteers, very committed, which also drives market, frankly. And so I can't say enough about the agreement. These aren't easy to do because they got lots of details. But I think this is one that is advantageous to the nonprofit organization, is advantageous to the city. So therefore, because of that, I can tell you that it's of great advantage to the region and the zoo in particular.
Is there anybody in the audience who wants to add anything? Okay, to kick this off, why don't we have a motion?
He put his hand up.
Oh,
Mark is going to
we do have somebody. Okay.
Mark Vukovich, CEO at the Blank Park Zoo. Thank you for having us here again tonight. I have had the job for about 18 months, and for over a year, Don and I and Ben have become fast pals in trying to figure out what would best for both organizations. From our side of the coin is it lets us plan and develop exhibits and build them in a timely manner without the process of multi-approvals and multi-bidding situations. And we think we've done a pretty good job. We had 360,000 people walk through the front door, and when you count the people we touch educationally, we're over 400,000 this year. And as we speak, I have the New Australia exhibit in the ground with the foundations being built. We have the sea lion exhibit on the final stages of approval. The sea lion pool was the monkey moat when it was built in 1966, and as such, it is way beyond its lifespan. And we intend on tearing it entirely out and putting in a new sea lion pool with underwater viewing and a shade structure to protect the animal's eyes. We have replaced this year 3 contact barn roofs, 3 pavilion roofs, the maintenance shop roof, and the Discovery Center roof, and are going to be breaking ground on the quarantine barn bird holding, which is required to remain AZA certified, which we're only one of the 220 zoos in the United States that is AZA certified, the only one in Iowa. So we think that this agreement from the zoo side lets us have some flexibility in moving forward and continuing to become more statewide. We have touched all 99 counties last year, and I think part of what this let us do from a philosophical point of view is when you get out and about, unfortunately people think that this is Des Moines Zoo and the Des Moines paying for it, and we think we'll have a better, easier time to get people in Cedar Rapids, people in Fort Dodge, people involved when we are totally just leasing the ground more or less, and a nonprofit like the Arts Center has become more of a statewide organization. We do educational seminars in Red Oak, Spencer, Fort Dodge. We were all over the state last year teaching teachers how to teach, and we intend to really work at becoming more of a statewide organization with statewide support. That's our goal. We are willing, as part of this, and some of the transfer cost, when this goes into effect, we will take on trash, we will take on all our own IT, stuff we've been piggybacking off the city and enjoying freebies from. We will take on snow plowing, we will take on property and casualty insurance. We're umbrellaed under the city's property and casualty insurance, and we'll take on some of those functions. And we hope to grow the zoo every year and do something new every year. And so we're really eager to get started. Any questions I can answer for anybody?
I just have just a clarification
Yes.
point for me. The $290,000 from Bravo, is that dependent on the 7% hotel motel
Yes.
tax? Okay.
Yes. That is in the agreement that if the 7% goes away, we suffer along with everybody else. Yes.
And I don't know, Mike, or Mark, if this is to you, but in terms of like the Bravo funding, what's the timing on knowing if that's actually going to be available? What happens if Bravo doesn't come through? What do you do?
Well, the way I understand it, and Bravo is up for renewal, I think, June of this year. Des Moines collects 7% on all the beds in Des Moines, and then transfers that money to Bravo, and then Bravo hands it out to the cultural organizations in the area. Now, obviously, West Des Moines does the same thing, so does Clive and other cities. The goal with this was that as long as, if Bravo goes away and Des Moines continues to collect the 7%, we will get our money. If Bravo goes away and the 7% goes away, or there's some issue that causes Des Moines not to collect the 7% on the motels in Des Moines, then we would obviously lose that funding.
The one little change I'd make to that is that we don't send all the 7% to Bravo.
Yes. Yeah.
The city also contributes to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. The city also retains some of its hotel motel tax money that we actually pay off bonds. We just got done paying off, for instance, bonds in the old Secretary Stadium with hotel motel tax money. So there's a portion of it that goes to Bravo, and I think it's 2 or 3 sevenths. 2 sevenths that goes to Bravo. So, and as Mark said, it's a contractual arrangement, and that contract is due to run out. But it's been a pretty good agreement for the city, and that this has been a re-granting institution that the individual cities don't have to deal with all the different agencies that look for money, and the zoo and Botanical Center have been great recipients of those funds, not only from Des Moines, but from the other municipalities over the course of the last several years.
So where's the 7%? I mean, has it always been 7%, or does that fluctuate?
Well, it's been 7% for some time, and that's a level that's fixed by state law, and it can be a maximum of 7% set by local taxpayers, and it may have been 6 in the last 20 years or so and went to 7, but it's at 7 as a statewide max.
Thank you.
One other question, Don, as I look at the $8.1 million general obligation, and maybe I'm not looking in the right place, but I'm trying to track it to what you gave us today about the CIP. Is that 8.1 million in here somewhere?
Well, let me try to look at the same piece of paper you're looking at, and I hope I'll have an answer for that. The short answer is yes, it's in the recommended budget. What you don't have is, you might recall, you'll get in a greater detail, let's say Parks Improvement down here. That Parks Improvement item includes all of the city's capital improvement budgets: swimming pools, aquatic facilities, wading pools, urban conservation, parks redevelopment, and it's a part of that. If you look above it, in 2011, the parks budget is $4,375,000. So between 11, 12, and 12, 13, and 14, I should say, those payments will be made to the zoo. I think our agreement with them has us making that payment by the end of 2013, as I recall. So it runs over those fiscal years. So the answer is yes. What you're not seeing today is that breakdown of all that list of 20 or so projects, which would include the zoo.
Okay, so is that front-loaded? You know, more of the 8.1 early and then less?
It is, and I'll provide you with a breakdown of what that is. I don't know that it's in this agreement, and I don't want to quote it without, but we have negotiated terms that have them doing certain construction in 2011, 12, and 13, and actually, on the basis of the construction they do, we then come back in after the fact with an economic development grant in a negotiated amount, that reimburses. I shouldn't say reimburse as much as grants them funds on the basis of their performance under the terms of this grant. A bit complicated, and I can give you the detail. But what I mentioned with front loading before was that originally the zoo had asked for a little bit more money, but it would spread out over a longer period of time. Mark might talk to their strategy behind program, but I think it was their desire to do more right now, and they really needed the city's participation up front.
The issue has become that when the first 2080 was signed 5 years ago, there was concern that there had been a lot of deferred maintenance not done on the zoo between 1986 and 2005, and that when the foundation took it over, they were hoping that they and the city agreed to a substantial uplifting of the original center part of the zoo. 5 years later, we've not done a lot of that, and for me to spend my money on new stuff, I needed to be able to count on a flow from the city to help repair the old stuff. And this year, for example, the sea lion pool would have to be not used if we didn't tear it out and start over. So that was number one. Number two, we had a lot of roofs that were 30 years old that we've already replaced, hoping we get this agreement put together and reimburse ourselves so we can then use our money for new projects. And the stuff coming forward is the quarantine barns required by AZA, and they gave us a pass 3 years ago when we had the AZA certification. So we have a list of things between us that I'm going to use that upfront money for. And it's all things that are 30 years old and in need of deferred maintenance.
I would tell you that the full agreement is $27 million from them, 8.1 from us. And we don't put any money in until they spend money. We're in arrears already with them a bit because they've already done some capital work ahead of us, so there'll be an upfront contribution the first year that's a bit higher. But our funding follows their funding, and of course that's an assurance to the council that they actually make good on their capital fundraising, and if something happens and their projects slow down, so would our funding.
Well, I think it's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mark before he leaves here? Okay, thank you, Mark. Now, we're approving sort of a conceptual agreement here. Will we see something again later when it's an actual contract?
No, it's not our intention to bring back the full contract to you unless there is substantial changes to the terms and conditions. In other words, if for some reason the money got to be different or the levels of control changed, I think we'd feel obligated to bring that back to you because that would be a different policy consideration for you. But in fact, the next agreement will have a lot of additional language in it that is not so much policy as it is the legalese will need to develop the agreement, and we'd like the authority to move ahead on the basis of this. I think Mark is moving the same way with his board. His board took a similar action today to adopt the agreement on the basis of this understanding. And I would tell you that I thought this, might have started out just being kind of a general description of terms and conditions. I'd have to say after working on this, just about every single word in here means something. So it's almost, it's about as close to an agreement as you can get without all the other pieces that we add. Now, having said that, members of the board, if you'd prefer to see the full agreement before the council acts on it, I'd be happy to bring it back in front of you. I may have to do that at a special meeting. I think we're planning on going to the council in late February, so the timing I wouldn't be certain on. But if you'd like to see it before the council acts on it, I'll sure work out a way to do that.
Does anybody feel inclined to want to proceed down that path of looking at the actual contract?
Personally, I'm fine with these guiding principles and giving the department the flexibility they need to finish the agreement.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion, comments, questions? Are we ready to vote? Okay, Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Galloway.
Yes.
Gelb.
Yes.
Ogle.
Yes.
Haney Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Cahill.
Yes.
Cremery.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Thornton.
Yes.
Chen.
Yes.
It is approved. Okay, next we'll move on to receive and file item E, the Urban Fisheries Project presentation.
I'll ask staff to come up and set up for this. While they're doing this, just briefly, I think this is some information that if we didn't take a few minutes to present it, you probably wouldn't know all that you're doing with urban fisheries. It's pretty remarkable, actually. When I saw the full scope of the program, I got to tell you, I was very impressed. I didn't realize that Tim had taken this as far as he had and had all the partners on board. So, but it's not just about fishing. It's about really water quality. Without stealing his thunder, I'll turn it to Tim Smith, who's a Park and Recreation Supervisor in the department.
Thanks, Don. Chairman Galloway, members of the board, I'm Tim Smith, Program Supervisor. The 2007 Des Moines Community Interest Survey ranked fishing, riverfront parks, and other nature areas as important facilities. This presentation will show how we responded to the citizen demand for connection to nature, and specifically aquatic habitats. The next two slides will highlight the importance our citizens place on connecting with nature. As you can see by the graphs, the importance of nature-related facilities ranks very high. Over the past few years, we have begun to address this citizen demand by collaborating with the DNR to offer increased aquatic education opportunities and improved local urban fisheries. I will discuss aquatic education, and Ben Dodd from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources will discuss urban fisheries. The objective of our aquatic education program is to get youth and families fishing at local ponds. We offer various programs to reach this objective, including family clinics held at local ponds, a fish fry at Gray's Lake, and skills clinics at wading pools. All these events are free to children, as the program is funded by an Iowa Department of Natural Resources Fish Iowa grant. The most successful part of this program has been fishing clinics that are held for area youth organizations at local ponds. These clinics consist of instruction on baiting hooks, knot tying, and fish identification. We follow that with an hour or two of fishing. And the good part about this is, for many participants, this is their first fishing experience. So our department has collaborated with multiple youth organizations, including the Boys and Girls Club, Angman Camp Shalom, Girl Scouts, the Salvation Army, and Campfire USA. We've had great success with our aquatic education program, having doubled participation numbers since 2008. Last year, 2,800 youth took part in this program, making it the biggest and most diverse park and recreation urban fishing program in the state. So we hope to continue to expand this program by working with more organizations and improving our urban fisheries. And here to talk about those fisheries is Ben Dodd from the Department of Natural Resources.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
All right, I'd like to start off by introducing two of the colleagues that have worked very hard on this project with me. Barb Geiger, she's an aquatic education coordinator, and also Steve Conradi, who's an urban fisheries specialist at Iowa State University. The slide in front of you talks a little bit, or illustrates the agenda of the talk. I'm going to start off by discussing the goals of the project, get into showing you where we've worked, talk a little bit about the data that we've collected and how we've collected it. We'll discuss briefly our preliminary results, and then wrap it up by talking about some funding opportunities. So the basic goals were to improve urban fishing opportunities at city-owned water bodies. Also, through that project, we want to improve resident awareness and water quality in Des Moines-owned parks, and also assist the city of Des Moines in becoming an example of how cities across the state can actually improve urban fisheries. So here's a map of the study areas that we've been looking at. About a dozen ponds or small lakes that we've been studying, scattered across the city. And the first thing we did is we started looking at the physical and biological components of these small lakes. We wanted to take an inventory on what species of fish we had in these lakes, and also assess the size of the fish that were there, and also the body condition. We've also looked at water quality data through the Iowa Water Volunteer Program. Steve's actually gathering that into a database now. And we've also used some of our folks from Iowa State that have some good aquatic vegetation experience to help us out with determining which species we have in these ponds. And then we also did a visual watershed assessment. Maps can be really important to a project like this. Steve and Andy, Andy Odding's also a fisheries employee, spent the winter of 2009 and 2010 drilling multiple holes, hundreds of holes across most of these lakes, and submerging a pole to determine the depth, and then also submerging that even further to determine the sediment depth in these lakes. I'll show you a couple examples of those in a second. And then Jesse Leckband with the City of Des Moines Public Works did a very nice job providing watershed and stormwater maps as well. So here's here's an example of the maps that we can produce with this data. This is McRae Pond. The upper left is the actual depth map or contour map, and then the bottom right map is the sediment depth. And the reason that sediment depth is so important is because down the road, if we're actually interested in removing that sediment, we can have a volume estimate. How many cubic yards of sediment do we actually need to remove, or can we remove? And you can see in that contour map, McRae Pond has a maximum depth of about 8 foot, but it's also got sediment up to 7 foot. So you can actually deepen that pond quite a bit with dredging. Another thing we're very interested in is human dimensions. And we're going to tackle that by using several different techniques. First, we want to try and perform a creel survey, which is actually an angler survey, and also do some park user counts. The angler survey, we simply go around and interview the anglers that are fishing that lake and ask them about what they've been fishing for, what they're catching, how long have they been fishing, looking at things like effort, how well are they satisfied with their fishing, what sort of things would they like to see there. We've also got some partners at Iowa State who are interested in looking at stakeholder and partner interviews, and then also performing some neighborhood organization focus groups. The reason for all this work before we do anything is so that we can create a baseline of data that we can compare to post improvements, assuming we get money for making the improvements that are necessary. We can go back and repeat some of these things, looking at the changes to our fishery, to our water quality. Did we actually educate the folks living in these watersheds and things like that? So as far as the results go, we saw a mixed bag. There's been a lot of neglect from a fisheries management standpoint, I would say, over the years. We saw lakes that were experiencing winter kills. I think that was Riverview Pond in the upper left. We saw extreme vegetation, excessive vegetation growth in Whitmer Pond, the bottom left. We saw a lot of rough fish. We saw carp, bullheads, buffalo, and species like that. We also saw goldfish that even weighed over 6 pounds, and that was from Whitmer Pond, I believe. So those were likely a release from a child's fish tank at one point in time. And yeah, did you have a question?
Do we grow fish like that in Des Moines? That orange one?
That's from Whitmer, is that right? Yeah, Whitmer Pond. That was sampled with our electrofishing gear.
That's from Whitmer Pond.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know, we saw just a variety of things in these ponds, and some were surprising, like 6-pound goldfish. We weren't expecting that. We also saw a couple diamonds in the rough. Gray's Lake, that was I think a 15-inch crappie that we sampled there one day, and you know, it was just a wide variety of results. So what we did is we took these dozen sites and said, after sampling all these sites, we said, okay, we've got a dozen water bodies. Some of these flood by the river. They're very tough to manage. Some are very shallow. They experience fish kills in the summer, the winter. And we tried to prioritize which of these ponds could be sustainable fisheries for the city of Des Moines. And what we came up with were the four ponds you see up there: Whitmer Pond, Greenwood Pond, McRae Pond, and then also Tie Dam. Tie Dam's a little unique in that I believe the city owns part of that shoreline access, and then there's a private community that owns the other part. But I do believe that they're interested in this project. We haven't talked with them yet, but we do hope to. So even the fisheries that are priority water bodies are pretty poor right now. They're in pretty poor shape. We've seen a lot of silt. We've got low predator density. We have a low population of largemouth bass. And when you see a low population of predators, you get excessive numbers of panfish, bluegills, and crappie, and then they don't grow. So we call that a stunted panfish population, where we see numerous 4 to 5 inch panfish, and most folks are not interested in keeping panfish that small. So it really becomes kind of a bad situation. And then also the rough fish, like I mentioned before, we've got carp, we've got bullheads, we've got some issues there to take care of as well. Some of our future considerations or future potential improvements could include improved aeration, lake deepening through dredging or digging out, fishery renovation, stocking, implementing a stocking regime, and also consistently monitoring in the future. The good thing about this project is we actually have some funding opportunities already on the table. Our supervisor called us here, I don't know, probably several months ago, and said, we've secured $100,000 for you guys to work with the city of Des Moines to improve this water quality and these fisheries. We've actually got a potential for $250,000 if we do this 2 years, which we're hoping to do. But the city had budgeted $25,000 for 2011 to match our $100,000, and we're hoping to double that in 2012. We've also got some partners with the Polk Soil and Water Conservation District. We've been talking with them, and I believe that we're going to submit a development grant, which should help us secure additional funding to look at water quality a little more in depth, and also to do some watershed landowner surveys as well, where we look at their awareness of these issues, maybe like fertilizer application on their lawns. Do they have pets? Do they have, do they clean their pet waste up? Where are problems coming from? Things like that. So how are we going to determine where to spend this money? Well, we've collected a lot of the data. We're trying to pull together a tactical team through Polk County and Polk Soil and Water Conservation District, some folks from the NRCS, Iowa State University, and the City of Des Moines to review this data, and then try and select several good options and make a decision that we can write a contract on and actually implement some of these improvements. They'll probably be focused on things like watershed improvement, stream bank stabilization, sediment basins, bioswales. There's a number of things. Those are just some examples. With that, we'll take any questions. This was a photo from Greenwood Pond. When we were working there, we met a young man who was very interested in entomology and probably knew his aquatic insects better than any of us there. So, yeah, any questions? Yep.
I may have gotten off key on this thing somewhere along the line, but I got the impression you're studying these little bodies of water rather carefully and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Does Cedar Rapids do that too in theirs? What I'm leading up to, we saw pictures of the whole thing. What I'm thinking of, you get all this data and then we have a monster flood, and I would think it throws all your data wacko.
Have a monster flood?
If that happened, yeah.
Yeah, the big rain events can throw a wrench in your data, and in fact it did. 2010, our aquatic vegetation was totally different than in 2009, and so we're actually going to have Iowa State look at that vegetation again. Yeah, what we do is, as far as the water quality stuff goes, we'll actually take baseline water quality where we just got normal flows, and then they'll actually take folks can take stormwater event sampling as well. So as soon as you get like a 2-inch rain, you can get out and sample the water to differentiate between when you're having really heavy rains and when you're not, and going from there you learn a lot more about the system. But yeah, it can have a big impact, and it can also flush some fish out. But these ponds should sustain, should be able to hold a sustainable fishery. Some of the other lakes, like Case Lake, Riverview, some of those that actually, they're old oxbows, and so they flood by the river. And the reason those weren't on our priority list, at least from a fisheries standpoint, is because they're constantly flooding, and they're very difficult to manage, because every time it floods, you get an influx of carp, bullheads, all these undesirable species that really throw your management out the window. So from our standpoint, it's basically money going out the door.
Is your basic purpose to improve the quality of fishing in, say, Des Moines?
It is, yeah. And this is a part of a much larger project. We've been working with Polk County on a lot of their areas. We've got a big lake restoration project going on at Easter Lake right now with Polk County and the NRCS. We're working on Fort Des Moines. We're working with the City of Pleasant Hill on Copper Creek. We've got a lot of different lakes in the metro that we're trying to work on and improve. It's become a focus of our management here in Central Iowa. All right. Thanks a lot.
Questions?
I'd just like to say before Ben sat down, Ben and Barb Geiger and Steve Conrady, they've been terrific. I got to tell you, they've been dogged with Tim and with Brian about getting this urban fisheries deal going here in Des Moines. And I didn't quite know what we were doing to begin with, to be honest with you, because I just was trying to figure out where it fit in with the priorities of things we were doing. And it took me a while of them hitting me upside the head and realize what an urban conservation opportunity this was. And, we're serving a lot of kids and adults, people fishing, too, 2,800 in the program, largest in the state of Iowa. Wow, that's great. Put that on the Facebook site. Which, by the way, we have a Facebook site now if you're not aware of that. But I want to thank you, Ben and Steve and Barb particularly for your efforts here, and we're going to try to make the most of this.
I just have one, are you going to restock or try to restock?
Down the road,
No.
the way we try and approach these lakes is for an improvement to improve these lakes is we start with the watershed, which is everything that's draining into that lake. And if we don't start there and we start working on the lake itself, we still have all these problems. And so we try and address those problems in the watershed. We come down to the lake. It may require dredging, just hypothetically. We need to dredge the lake out, so maybe we draw it down or drain it completely. We dig it out, we fill it back up, we restock it with fish, and you have a good fishery in about 3 years. So it requires a lot of work up until then, but that's typically how we try to do that. So, thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Great report. Okay, is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of receiving and filing say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. The next we'll move on to receive and file item F, the 2010 Evelyn K. Davis Summer Report.
Tiva Dawson, our recreation manager, will talk with you about this. I think you
Chairman.
received some information in your packet, but she's going to give you a little more detail.
Chairman Galloway, members of the board, again, Tiva Dawson, Recreation Manager. Yeah, it's fun to come up and talk to you guys about the great things that are going on in our parks, especially Evelyn K. Davis Park, which I have lots of good news to share about this park. We have, for the past few years, had some special funding from individual donors to do dedicated park programming at Davis Park. We had really just a stellar cast of staff who worked out there this summer. We had John Terpkosh, who's in the audience tonight, who's our recreation program coordinator, who's worked with us for, I think, at least 20 years. Actually, you probably didn't recognize him from his tennis presentations. John actually came to me this summer and said, next year I'd be interested in helping supervise the Davis Park program. And I guess I didn't wait and assigned it to him right away when almost a day after he left the office asking that. So I really appreciate when staff steps forward and has a particular interest in an area. We also recruited recreation specialist Ramona Bates to do the day-to-day programming at the park. She was a teacher at Moines School. She taught special ed, and so she knew a lot of the kids or the kids' families that were already visiting the park. They put together just an awesome program, as you've probably read in the report, but I just wanted to review some of it. We had Monday through Friday, we had daily programs at throughout the day, 11 to 4, and that was through the summer. And John added fall programming, and this coming year in 2011, he's adding spring programs as well. Just a free drop-in program, offered a variety of classes and programs for the kids, including, as you can see, fishing and tennis and art and games and crafts. They even took field trips to get the kids out of the neighborhood, which they always don't have the opportunity to do. Went to the historical building, the sculpture park, and science center, to name a few. Worked with a number of partners for different programs like Character Counts, and had the big balloon release, and the Des Moines Library at Forest Avenue there for a reading club. And one of the things that I just found really endearing was the pony rides. I just thought this was a great sort of example of out-of-the-box kind of thinking that John brought to the programming at Davis Park, include the hot air balloon release as well. Again, we owed a lot to the partnerships that he and Ramona built up, working with Urban Dreams, Des Moines Schools, the Police Department, Children and Family Urban Ministries, neighborhood associations, the Grub YMCA, ISU Extension, just a number of different groups. And like I said, a lot planned for 2011. I know John's already kind of thinking this summer and beyond. So extending the day in the terms of how long we will have programming there for the kids. Extending the season, so really doing spring, summer, fall. Adding more evening programs. We do find that there's a challenge in terms of different kind of folks coming into the park in the evening. And also what we can do to help encourage other groups, the churches in the neighborhood, the neighbor association, and just even rentals of the park to come in and do more activities in the off time as well when we're not programming. John's also led developing a planning committee for the programming at the park. So he's including King's School and a number of different groups who would have an interest in programming that happens for kids there in the park, including helping really spearhead a student council at King's School who are going to help in then kind of connecting to park programs. And I just wanted to share one story. I talked to a parent who brought their kids, their children to the pony rides. And she said every time she drives by the park now, her little boy insists that they stop because he wants to go and ride the ponies again. And it just really told me that's the kind of emotional connection we want kids to have to our parks, and particularly Davis Park, which doesn't always have that kind of perception. So I just thought great things were going on. I wanted a chance to talk to you guys about it, and also just to give great accolades to John Turkosh and Ramona Bates for the hard work that they've been doing on site. Anything you want to add, John? Okay, thanks. Any questions? Thanks.
Okay, good job, Tiva, and thanks a lot, John. Okay, is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say, oh,
Hold on,
Cindy.
I mean, just make a comment, because quite often we remember the Evelyn Davis Park as one of those youth, caused some, fighting, shooting, and so on. And I'm excited to hear that, there is a positive side, and then we got the Des Moines Register reporter there. I should have reported this more often. It's not always it's a bad place to go. Actually, it's going to. I'm excited about when weather turns nice. What John and going to put in there.
Okay, yeah, great comment, Cindy, and as usual, the more people that use it someplace, the safer it is. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. Next, we'll move on to receive and file item G, reappointments to Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments, discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. Does anyone else have anything for the good of the cause?
I do, just real quick. I just wanted to thank everybody for your guys' thoughts, prayers, and support during this time. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Carol. Okay, I hope so everybody can make it January 31st to the strategic planning meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.